Welcome back to the second to last episode in this series. In today's video, I am 2 weeks out and I want to discuss a few things. First up, I want to discuss my thoughts at 1 week out from my show. Secondly, I want to discuss the peak week timeline and what my plans are for this peak week. And finally, I want to discuss my long-term bodybuilding aspirations. So as of this recording, I am now 8 days out or 7 days out. I don't really count the last day because the last day is just traveling and competing itself and stuff like that. So I'm basically a week out now, and yeah, this is going to be the second to last video in the series. First up, my thoughts at 1 week out. So 1 week out, it feels like I've been dieting forever, in part because I have. I've spent basically since the beginning of 2021 somewhat preparing for this show. I've spent maybe 6 out of the last 10 months dieting in some form, and then the rest has been spent either at maintenance or in mass. I've lost around 40 pounds total, so from around 240 pounds to around 200 pounds now. In fact, this morning I had my first weigh-in in over 4 years at below 200 pounds, or 90 kilograms for us European folk. And it's taken a toll. It's been 10 months of obviously smart training as well. I've taken some deload weeks, I've taken some maintenance phases and so forth. But spending 10 months with the singular goal of getting leaner and leaner and leaner, and as lean as I've ever been, has been hard. I am grateful that I only have 1 week left at this point. To be frank, the first 6 to 8 months of this whole prep were pretty easy. Again, living at 8 to 20% body fat is pretty comfortable, and so even cutting down to around 95 kilograms or 210 pounds was pretty comfortable. But the last few months have really taken it out of me, and so I am glad this prep is reaching its end. I'm experiencing a lot of overreaching symptoms and diet fatigue symptoms and prep fatigue symptoms all at once. As far as training overreaching symptoms go, I am starting to become very anxious about each session. Like every single session feels like an obstacle and at times insurmountable, and I get very anxious and nervous before each session. Even like a day before, I start getting nervous. If I think too far ahead, I get nervous as well. My whole body aches to some extent. Like most of my joints have some sort of slight pain or ache associated with them. Not any like serious injury that wouldn't just fade away with some calories and some rest, but just overall feeling quite rough. Then diet fatigue wise, I just feel basically permanently hungry. Like there's few moments where I feel satiated or anything close to satiation. It's a weird thing where even when I am quite full, like my stomach is full, I will still feel that sensation of hunger and wanting to eat more. Then as far as prep fatigue goes, which is sort of the same as diet fatigue in some sense, I am really not enjoying doing my steps anymore each day. I am extremely food focused, as I've mentioned in the last episode. It's gotten to a point where I mostly just think about food or training or NEAT or posing or what have you, and the food focus in particular has been quite debilitating. When I try and go to bed, for example, food is most of what I think about. I dream about food, I think about food all the time. I haven't reached the stage where, for example, I'd feel guilt or anxiety regarding food, but mostly I just think about food all the time. Like it's something, I guess, sort of like a rumination, wherein you don't really stop thinking about it. And that's been quite rough. It's the first time I've really experienced anything of this magnitude. And I'm looking forward to it being over. At this point though, I am 1 week out from my show. I've got 3 days of hard dieting left, 5 days of hard training, or 6 sessions total, and 7 days of prep as a whole. And so At this point, I'm taking it, as I said, one session at a time, one small battle at a time. My day can sort of be separated into a few battles I have to win every day to optimize everything. One is doing my steps, so I do at least 15,000 steps a day. A second one would be getting my training sessions in, so that's usually 1 or 2 training sessions, unless it's a rest day. Then not going over my calories, that's the main goal as far as the prep is concerned. And then finally, my posing. If I can get all of those in a day, it was a good day. And thus far, in the past month or so, I've been extremely consistent with those. As a whole, during this prep, I've stayed maybe 95% or more consistent with training, and over 90% consistent with nutrition as well, especially during the last month or so. That said though, just yesterday I sustained a small injury. I was doing overhead press, which I didn't record in this video. I was doing overhead press as literally the first set of my last training week, and my right shoulder blade just sort of went and strained itself. Initially, my thought process going into it was, oh shit, do I now just call it a day and not train for the rest of the day? Because that was my first set of 2 sessions that day. And a big part of me was ready to just give up on the training day and make adjustments and take it easy. But then I had to think about it and be a bit more cool-headed about it for a few minutes. And eventually I decided, okay, let's keep going with the session, see what hurts and what doesn't, what I can actually do with minimal pain and what I can't. And so I wound up skipping 1 set of overhead pressing, but getting through all of the remaining training for the day. And so overall, what initially announced itself as being quite catastrophic and dramatic, etc., turned out to be something I could work with. And I think this deep into prep, injury should almost be expected, and you need to work with it. You should always try to minimize how big of a thing injury becomes in your head. You should always try and find ways to work around it, ways to still keep up with training to an extent, even if it means modifying it and getting that desired stimulus while still recovering from that injury. Roughly speaking, those are my thoughts about prep at this point. I'm looking forward to being over. I wanted to quickly discuss the peak week timeline. So it's Saturday today. I'm competing on Sunday in a week. Here's how the peak week's gonna unfold. I'm training twice on Monday, AM session, PM session. AM session is upper body, PM session is lower body. On Tuesday, I'm training pull essentially, so back, shoulders, biceps, and so forth. Wednesday, I'm training AM, PM again. I have upper body or push in the morning and then legs in the evening. And then Thursday, I have one last session, which is pull again. Now, at the same time, I have one pump session in which I'm doing a few sets of 15 to 30 reps in all body parts to maximize glycogen replenishment. That session should burn a lot of calories overall in your body to maximize glycogen replenishment, but it shouldn't be very damaging because muscle damage can interfere with glycogen replenishment. And so it's basically going to be 2 to 4 sets for all body parts of 15 to 30 reps with exercises I'm accustomed to, because novelty or new exercises can actually increase muscle damage, and so you want to avoid introducing something new at that point. And then all sets will be taken to at most an RP5, just again because taking sets close to failure typically results in more muscle damage, which is not a goal during a pump-up session. And so that final pump-up session is going to take place on Saturday, around 24 hours before my comp. And yeah, as far as training goes, that's it. Steps are going to be kept at 15,000 every day to make it easier to calculate maintenance, calories, and so forth, nutritionally. So 15,000 steps daily until show day. Finally, nutritionally, up until Wednesday, so 4 days out from my show, I'm just cutting like I usually would. And then on Wednesday, I'll have a high calorie day where I increase my calories to around 110% of a maintenance, with those additional calories coming from carbs to fail out quite a bit and sort of see where I'm at look-wise. If after that I feel quite spilled over, the following days I drop calories down to around 80% of a maintenance, which is around a 500 calorie deficit for Thursday and Friday, so 3 and 2 days out from my show respectively. And finally on Saturday, I have between 80% and 110% of maintenance calories, depending on how I look. So all throughout this process, I'll be assessing my look in the AM and PM sometimes to see how I look. And if I look, for example, very dry but also small, I might add some carbs in and stick to the top end of that range on Saturday. Whereas if I feel quite spilled over and full and not very detailed, I might more so stick to the bottom end. As far as salt and water are concerned, I'm not going to manipulate them very much. On the day of the show itself, I'm going to have some extra sodium because food volume is a bit lower than usual and blood pressure is quite low towards the end of prep, and so having a bit of extra sodium can help make sure you're able to get a pump. That's basically it for my peak week timeline. On Saturday, the day before my comp, I'll be traveling up to Birmingham and staying in a hotel overnight, getting my tan in, doing my pump up session, relaxing for the evening, going to bed at a reasonable hour. In the morning, get up, get my second tan coat on, tan layer, whatever, then get on stage for pre-judging in the AM, which is symmetry and muscularity rounds, then eat some food in between the AM and the PM session, and then for my PM session, just hit up the posing routine, and then have the awards. Afterwards, I'll be going out to celebrate with some food. Finally, real quick, I just wanted to discuss in brief my bodybuilding aspirations long term. I'll probably make a full video about this or discuss it more at length in the next video. But to make a long story short, I'm 21 years old. This is my first competition. I think having one competition or so, maybe two, in your early 20s makes sense as a coach and as an athlete to get a feel for the experience. But then I think a lot of that time in your early 20s, even late 20s, even early 30s, should be spent mostly building a lot of size. And so I'll be spending my early to late 20s maybe competing 2 to 3 more times total in bodybuilding, 2 to 3 seasons I mean, if I do compete again, but spending the vast majority of that time in an off season building more muscle because I'm quite healthy now, and so now's a good time to build some muscle. Moreover, I think waiting until I'm at least 25 to compete again makes sense. When I'm 25, I'll make a decision of whether or not I want to try PEDs. Now, trying PEDs does not entail staying on them forever. It doesn't entail using much of them. It just means I will consider taking them and seeing how I respond. If I respond well in terms of what I get out of it, if I think it's a good choice as far as my competitive potential goes, if I respond well in terms of side effects, I'll consider dipping my toes in a bit further, but it'll always be a very methodical approach and very calculated, so to speak. But so my plan is to spend from now, after my show, until I'm around 25 in an off season, and when I'm around 25, I'll either plan to compete again in natural bodybuilding, or potentially begin using PEDs, see what I get out of it, how I respond, etc. And then if I go on PEDs, probably do an off season for a few more years to take advantage of the PEDs. Whereas if I stay natural and I want to compete again, that's when I'll compete. In brief, those are my bodybuilding plans for the next 10 years or so, 5 to 10 years. Those might change obviously over time, but that's the long and short of it. Anyways, that wraps up this video. I am very excited to get this prep over with, but I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please comment, like, subscribe, and I'll speak to you again in the next video.